Brainiacs, how's everybody doing out there? It's been a while. I just wanted to kind of have a little fun, brief chat tonight with a very special person who's gonna be here at the shop tomorrow from 1 to 4. We've got a friend of the shop, Mr. Dan Parent himself, is here, and we're gonna be talking about a lot of fun stuff like Kevin Keller's anniversary and Eliza Hahn and your creator-owned comic. So welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks for
It's
having me.
you're you're welcome. I can't wait to see you tomorrow.
Yeah,
This
I'm looking
is
forward
fun.
to it. It'll be nice. It'd be nice to come up to Rhinebeck.
Yeah, I there was a few months ago, Kelly Sue DeConnick was on Twitter, and she was like trying to promote local comic shops everywhere.
Mhm.
And so I ended up commenting on her Twitter, about it, and she like retweeted us and like boosted us. And then she was like, "Oh, you guys are in Rhinebeck." She's like, "I've been wanting to go to the Sheep and Wool Festival forever."
Okay, yeah, yeah.
So at some point, I guess Kelly Sue DeConnick and Matt Fraction may end up in Rhinebeck, and
Oh, wow.
hopefully
Very
they'll
nice.
stop by the shop and say hi.
Yeah,
But
no, Rhinebeck's cool. I've been there, a few times. It's a great town.
yeah, well,
You have that cool candy store in town that,
which
everybody knows about that.
we're apparently it's the best business in town, and we're second,
Oh,
according
well,
according to Paul Rudd.
I heard about that. Yeah, yeah,
Um, but
cool.
I'm so glad that you were able to do this with us.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So to kind of get started, for those who don't know, you write and draw for what I've come to know as one of the most popular comic book series like in the world. So something that I've learned is that anywhere that you go in the world, if you show people the Superman symbol, everybody knows what that is, whether they can speak English or not.
Mhm.
And also, if you show them an Archie comic, they'll say Archie. Like everybody
Yeah,
knows Archie everywhere.
right,
And
right.
so you've been working for Archie for, is it 15 years now?
Uh, 35 years.
Oh, 35 years?
35, yeah.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So, so can you give us a little, just a brief about how you got working into comics and how
Sure.
you connected with Archie?
Yeah. Well, I went out of high school. I went to the Joe Kubert School, which for anybody who doesn't know about the Kubert School, it's a school that specializes in cartooning and graphic art. And I was fortunate enough to go there. This is back in the 80s. And then Archie would come around and they would look at portfolios of different students. And I when I went there, I was even though I was also a superhero fan, I was also an Archie fan. So
Okay.
I had done pages of samples um, that they came and looked at. And fortunately, when I was in my third year of school, which is it's a 3-year program,
Yeah.
they liked my work enough to where they started giving me work like simple like 1 page gags and things like
Oh,
that
like
when I
while
was
you
in
were
my
still going to school?
while I was still going to school.
Oh, that's really
So
cool.
I was getting some work in my third year, and then when I graduated, it lucked out that there was an opening in the art department. Someone had left, so they were like, "You want to work in production, and then you could do like freelance at night." And I was like, "Yes, of course." So I had a job, full time job, right out of school, and so cut to 35 years later, and I'm still working for them pretty much full time. Not on staff anymore. I worked on staff for about 10 years,
Okay.
doing freelance and working in production, and
Yeah.
then I went totally freelance 10 years in. Um, but I've been there, yeah, 35 years, writing and drawing,
Which
and
is really like that, I feel like in itself is also like really um not rare, but I mean it's kind of rare. You don't find a lot of writers that also cross into art and vice versa. A little bit more these days
a
than
little bit. but I started out, as just an artist, and then as I started to get going, I just was coming up with ideas for stories, and I was some of the stories I wasn't that crazy about that I was drawing, and that's when they were like, well, just give us some ideas for your own stories, and I did, and then my first stories weren't that great, but then once I started to like get the hook, the hang of it, because there's like kind of like a formula to writing a 5-page story, which
Yeah.
it doesn't sound it sounds simple, but it's not that simple because you have not much real estate in a 5-page story to get the story done.
Yeah, I feel like writing a short of any kind is probably like just super difficult because
It
like
is.
you don't have the elbow room to, you know, to paint the picture. You just kind of got,
It's much easier to write a 20-page story, like a full book length story, than it is to write a 5-pager, I think.
yeah.
So, but
Well,
once I started doing that, I just started to do those kinds of stories, and then a few years in, I just was kind of I didn't write all of my stories, or at least 50% of my stories I was writing,
nice. Well,
and
that
then I
kind of brings me into well, my next question was with it. So, for those that don't know, you are the creator of Kevin Keller, whose birthday you've been celebrating this year. Um,
yes.
and I know that like when you write a new character, like, or at least when I do, I kind of put a little bit of myself and other people I know into them to like make them feel a little bit more real. Um,
Right, right.
so when you got to writing Kevin, like
Mhm.
did you have like a recipe of people that you kind of used to,
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, there were I borrowed like different people's stories, in the early Kevin stories. It also kind of, went with the sort of like the Archie formula too. When we create new characters, you try and given like sort of like well, I don't want to say a wholesome background because it is Archie, but
Yeah.
sort of like that like idyllic kind of situation. Like when Kevin came to Riverdale and kind of comes out in the book, it's pretty much like the coming out story that like would be like the perfect coming out story because it's in
Yeah.
Riverdale.
Like,
Um, it wouldn't, and then there's been some criticism where people are like, oh, that's kind of like, that's not really like the way was for me coming out. And then I'm like, well, yeah, but this is like the idyllic way it's supposed to be.
yeah.
Remember, we're still
And
dealing with Riverdale.
it's also not really the same for everybody. Like, I mean, you can't, uh, place an analog on that would fit everybody's story.
Right, right. But I'd say with Kevin, as with like other new characters, like you sort of like, yeah, you just go with people that you might know or people that you like even like TV and movies. You kind of like you borrow a little
Yeah.
trait from someone, but
So
but
was there
yeah,
much pushback from like the higher ups at Archie when you kind of wrote the story? Like,
no, not at all because they were totally on board. When I wrote, Kevin's been around since 2010.
yeah.
Or late 2010. So we're a little over the 10th anniversary, but when the Kickstarter started, it was a little, we were in
Oh
that
yeah, that's
realm.
right. Yeah. Okay, so we're
So,
more like 12 or 13.
yeah, we're getting to about 12, but
Oh, Kevin's in his teens now, or
right.
he's a tween.
I know, right. Um, but before when Kevin was created in 2010, we had new ownership of the company at that point. John Goldwater, who was the son of the one of the original owners of the company, took over as CEO. And because my two other bosses had passed away in like 2008,
Oh,
2009, they passed away.
oh,
Um, and just to go back a little bit for people, Archie is a family-owned company owned by two families, the Silverclights and the Goldwaters.
oh, I
So
didn't know that.
it is still a family-owned company. Archie's not owned by any corporation. Archie's privately owned.
That is
Um,
awesome.
so when the two original owners died, um, the new family members came in, and then
Mhm.
John Goldwater, who was, let's just say, he was a lot younger than his brother, and he was just more had more of like a modern outlook and wanted to just make Archie relevant. He thought Archie was very like kept saying, why does Archie still look like it's in the 1950s a lot of the time? was like, yeah, you're right. It's fine for that nostalgia thing, but so at that point we just started to just add a lot of new characters,
Yeah.
different diversities, different diverse ethnicities. And the way we did it was we had this. The storyline was that there was another school that was shutting down, and they had to sort of combine forces with Riverdale High.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was our excuse for being able to bring an influx of new characters.
So it was essentially like when Pawnee and Eagleton had to come together as one town.
Right, exactly, exactly. And then, so then we had created these new characters, and then like we get to see which ones clicked and which ones didn't. But it was really fun to just to do that. And then shortly thereafter, that was when we introduced Kevin. And the bosses at that time were totally on board with it. John Goldwater was totally on board, and we just wanted to make sure that when we created Kevin and put Kevin in there, that he was that it didn't come off as like a stunt
Yeah.
or as like a gimmick because
Which a
it,
lot of times it does, I feel like.
it does. And there was some, not every gay character introduced in comics that happened with, but there were some cases where it did.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to make sure that this is a character who was going to be like part of Riverdale. And we wanted to introduce the character in the right way. We didn't want to make it like an after school special or make it like a big
Yeah.
deal. So we did it. We wanted to make sure it was done with a funny story in the typical Archie flavor.
Yeah.
Um, so we
That
did,
was
and
Veronica was essentially trying to get with the new guy in town, right?
right,
Yeah.
right, right, right. So we get to really show like it was kind of like I always just simplify it as it was sort of like a like a Three's Company episode, like with the misunderstanding formula.
Yes. Yeah. All you needed was Mr. Furley in there or Mr. Roper.
And that's a formula that I use a lot. The misunderstanding always is a good comic book formula for comedy.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, the basic premise was there's this hot new guy in town. And Veronica has the hots for him, and she just can't figure out why he's not attracted to her. He comes out to Jughead and says, "I'm gay." And so Jughead makes sure he keeps that to himself for a little while because Jughead just wants to watch Veronica make a fool of herself,
Yeah.
trying to get Kevin's attention. So and then Betty finds out Kevin's gay. Or he tells her, but then Betty is so like happy to see Veronica consume with someone else that she has Archie to herself. So she
Exactly.
figures she's not going to say anything either. So everybody has these like their own motives for not like outing Kevin.
Yeah.
Well, not really outing, but letting
Oh, yeah.
Veronica know. And then
Yeah.
at one point, Kevin just is like tells Veronica, and then she's like, oh well, now it makes sense. But Veronica's so consumed with her vanity that it never dawns on
Yeah.
her.
It never even occurred to her that, like,
So it was fun. It was just fun playing with the characters, and yeah, the story just was like was well received, and then that sort of like just spawned us doing more Kevin stuff. And then he had his own series, and the sales were good, and then it sort of like I
like
won't say like
that
yeah.
really, like, it kind of snowballed Archie.
Well, what
Like,
happened after that was then came other new things like Afterlife with Archie,
yeah.
and sort of like these new sort of like concepts that just kind of brought us into like the 21st century.
I remember at that time, like every time I went near a comic shop, I would be like, "Oh wow, Archie Comics is like trying something else new." And then
Yeah.
like there was a lot of like, I don't want to say throwing spaghetti at the wall, but it was
Mhm.
just a lot of like, it seemed like there was a lot of stuff happening in like the Archie bullpen where everybody was like, "You know what might be fun? Let's try this."
And then we started doing some crazy team ups, I did Archie meets Kiss,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
Yep.
then we did like Archie meets the Ramones. Just
Yep.
we're just these wacky crossovers,
Yeah.
and those did well too. And Archie versus Predator, which was really popular.
Yeah. And
Um,
and then what was that? When did Sabrina, the Chilling Adventures, that
the
was
Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which did
was
really
that
well too. Well,
2014 or
Afterlife, I think Afterlife was like probably the biggest success of all of these new titles. And
yeah,
then so they decided to bring in Sabrina, and that was a huge success too. And
yeah,
then what happened was like with Kevin being popular and Afterlife and Sabrina, it really helped get Riverdale on the air.
Oh, because
Um,
people like were talking
well,
about Archie again.
there was a more of awareness, but I know that when they were like pitching the show, they were just showing the fact that Archie was doing some like interesting stuff.
Yeah,
Um, and then Riverdale came out, which was very popular, and then there was the Sabrina show, the Netflix series that was based
yeah.
on the comic.
And now they're combining the two of them
I
into
know it's crazy. I
yeah,
don't know what the hell's going on. It's like I just watched one episode like a little while ago, and like I mean, Cheryl was setting things on fire with her mind, like fire starter, and so I have to like really catch up on what's going on because I've missed the
yeah.
boat. And there's only one more season of Riverdale, so
Oh
I
yeah.
I'm very interesting to see how they're gonna make it end.
I feel like Archie is still like I've always been surprised that there's never been any more like kind of animated. Like Riverdale is awesome, but
Mm.
it's a world that's so like perfect for animation, especially now, like with
Well,
so many different like animated shows that I feel like animation is little by little becoming more respected here. Like in
right,
other parts of the world, like people are crazy for it.
right.
But here it's finally starting to get respect. And I feel like Archie is the perfect property to like kind of jump into that, you know?
Well, I think there's some animated projects in the works.
Oh, cool.
But I know like the big thing with Archie back in the 70s, Archie was big on Saturday mornings.
Yeah. Yeah. My sisters and I used to watch that.
I mean, it was on actually from what I understand
And
it
and
was
then in
on.
the 80s.
What's that?
In the 80s, then they did it again with
Well, in the eight
they modernized it and
they did like the new Archies.
yeah.
And that was kind of weird because they were sort of like about 13
Yeah.
and they had like a very very 80s look.
Yeah.
But that was on for a while, and then in the like around 2000, they had Archie's Weird Mysteries, which was pretty
Oh,
popular. It's really popular in Canada still. I guess they're still running it in Canada. It was whenever I go to Canada, people are always asking for Archie's Weird Mysteries. So it's
oh,
basically our version of like Scooby Doo,
we do.
basically.
Yeah. Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
but the original Filmation series ran for like 10 years. It ran like from 68 to 78, and it was on like there was one point where like Archie had like 3 hours of Saturday morning because they had the Archie show and they had Sabrina and they had Josie and the Pussycats.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And they had the Groovy Ghoulies. So they had like a 3 hour block that was just all owned by Archie on Saturday mornings. So it was,
Nice.
yeah. I mean, of course, when it started out, it was like when like Sugar Sugar became really like the
Yeah.
was a big pop hit.
And then Josie went into outer space.
Just went to outer space. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, the Archie. There were so many incarnations of that Archie. There was like U.S. of Archie, and then there was like the Archie Sabrina hour, and then there was all these like different Archie's TV funnies where they incorporated other comic strips. There was a lot.
Yeah,
That was back back in the days when you had to watch cartoons on Saturday morning because they weren't on like there was no
yeah.
Cartoon Networks.
God, I miss that. I'm like I truly do miss like that kind of feeling, waking up on Saturday morning and just had like it was your time, like they made
Yeah,
it just for us, you know.
it was exciting. Like you get your cereal and
Yep.
the whole morning you just sat there and watched it and
Yeah.
it was cool. It was it was something that like a kid nowadays wouldn't even understand why that was cool because they
Yeah.
have such access to all kinds of animation. But
Why are you waking up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday when you could just watch this stuff anytime?
there's still this thing about watching something when it's broadcast. I
Yeah,
don't know
like
what.
when it's on. Yeah.
Right. It's like when you watch like The Wizard of Oz or something like that. Like, yeah, you can watch it at any time and it's cool. But when they
Yeah.
used to show it, it was like a big
Yeah.
deal.
It was Wizard of Oz was that the Easter movie, and then Sound of Music was like the one that they would play just before Christmas or something.
Sound of Music was Easter.
Oh, Sound of Music was Easter, and
And I think Wizard of Oz was like more like around like November, like October, November, like fall.
oh yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I used to love that and look
Yeah.
forward to it. And then yeah, and then like Grease would be like kind of the same time every year. It
Yep.
was great.
Gone
Uh,
with the Wind. I think like Gone with the Wind was like a big deal. Like they would show
yeah,
that like in like and
yeah.
but yeah,
But
nowadays it's
I, I
different
I've
world.
got us off the rails.
I know.
we were talking about you kind of flushing out and helping to make Riverdale a more like robust and diverse area
Mhm,
to
mhm,
live in the world.
right.
And just recently you created another child of
Mhm,
yours in Riverdale, Eliza Hahn.
right,
Can
yes.
you can you tell everybody a little bit about her, like who she is and how she fits into Riverdale?
Yeah, I mean, she's a character that, I created with T. Franklin. You know, T wrote the story, and I did the designs
Love T.
for
Franklin.
Eliza,
She's
and T
one of my
yeah, T's
favorite creators today.
she's great. I mean, Bingo Love is such a great book. I mean, that was, like, such a wonderful a wonderful trade that she did.
And for anybody at Netflix watching, it should totally be a Netflix property. Somebody sign a contract with her and give her more
Absolutely.
money.
That
Yeah.
should be one. Um, but no, she went with the character, so I did the designs for it, and basically, she's a character who, is pansexual. And then, so in the storyline, like in the storyline before, a few years ago, I created a character called Harper Lodge, who is
Okay.
Veronica's cousin, who is handicapped. She's in a wheelchair.
Mhm.
Um, and she kind of had a little thing with Reggie last we saw her. But now we see her kind of in a love triangle a little bit with Reggie and with Eliza Hahn. So,
Riverdale is just like just bursting with love triangles.
our love triangles are our specialty. So we do best. We do those best. So there's sort of a little bit of a love triangle going on, and so we kind of, for the first time we kind of see that Harper's like sexuality is fluid. I guess she would be considered bisexual. But Eliza is a character who's just again she's like a tech wizard. She's really smart
Oh, that's cool.
and um and yeah. So she's just this is her introduction. So now we planted the seeds of her character, and now we can sort of see where her and Harper will happen with them, and whether Reggie has any is it going to be in the picture at all? I don't know. It's not looking good for Reggie, I don't think. But
So, so with working at Archie for over 30 years,
Mhm.
y- is there, I mean, aside from like your babies, like the characters that you've created, um, like who is your favorite Archie character to kind of work with? Who's your favorite person in Riverdale?
Well,
And
kind
why?
of it changes from time to time. Like Jughead's always a pretty constant because Jughead is always like the sort of like the nonconformist character. So he's always like the one you kind of gravitate to, or early one I gravitate towards.
Hmm.
But Sabrina is a real favorite of mine. I've always had a big love for Sabrina, and this is her 60th anniversary, so I'm working on like some Sabrina projects right now. Um,
Cool.
but Sabrina, I always, yeah, she was always like a big one, a big character for me. So
Nice. Very
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
I do remember as a kid, Jughead was always my favorite because um so for me, like in animation and comics, when they can make food like look good enough where you're like, oh, I want to eat that. And he was always eating stuff that I was like, oh, I want to eat that. And
Yeah.
that combined with his hat and just his like, I don't give a fuck attitude, uh,
Yeah.
made it where Jughead was my dude.
I always liked it when Jughead was like, just rolled his eyes at everything. Like, he always thought Archie and Betty and Veronica were so silly and stupid.
Yeah.
He always just did his own thing, and he just really just was in love with food.
Yeah.
That was like his love, and so yeah, he just was he's just this character that is just a cool character, and he's fun to draw too because he looks different than the other characters too. So he has like a different look, and
Yeah.
so
And
yeah, so but then there's sometimes you work on a character and you just like them a lot for that particular story. Like I might draw like a Dilton story, and I'll get like really into like Dilton for that time.
oh, cool.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, the characters are I was drawn to them as a kid, and I just was a fan as a child, and
As a comic book store owner, the one of the main kind of anecdotes I get from customers, like when you get your comic fans that like always will seek out a comic book store.
mhm,
but then you get your walk-ins of people that might be with them or people just off the street who are like, "Oh, what's this?" And it's those people that you always get the, "Oh, they still make comics" comment, and
Yeah, I
then
hear that a lot.
eventually it goes, "Well, I don't really know anything about comics. When I was a kid, I just used to read Archie." And
Yep,
I'm like, "Archie is comics. Like, of you do know comics." And
right.
then they start talking about like all their favorite storylines and all this stuff.
Mhm.
And that was one of the first indications to me that where I realized like Archie is one of the most popular um comic properties in the world.
Yeah.
And then the other aspect of it are kind of uh first generation men and women, or even men and women who are a lot older now, but they're immigrants,
Mhm.
and they tend to talk about how when they got here, or when their parents were here and raising them, they still didn't speak very good English. Archie tended to be the thing that helped them learn English.
Mhm. Yep, I heard that a lot. I heard
Yeah,
that a lot.
which is really
Or a lot of kids just in general, weren't interested in reading that much, and then they would get a hold of, like, the digests.
yeah,
They would just read them over and over again,
yeah.
um,
And the
and
thing
then
is, I don't think I ever remember as a child actually ever buying myself an Archie digest or an Archie comic. I
mhm,
always had like Marvel and DC stuff, but for some reason, our house was like had a ton of Archie. I mean,
yeah,
I'm the child of an immigrant. It might have just been my mom just throwing this stuff around, but I feel like
mhm.
every house always had some Archie in it. Every doctor's like it was everywhere.
Oh, yeah, yeah, with the digests, like, nowadays, our digests are still our biggest sellers,
Yeah,
and they've been our biggest sellers for, like, a couple decades now, and that's how Archie really, I think, does stay relevant and popular because, every 4 or 5 years, we get a whole new group of readers,
yeah,
and it's a lot of the people who pick up Archie are moms and dads in the checkout aisle, where you're sort of like captive. It's like a captive audience there. There, you're just waiting to pay for your stuff, and then you
yeah,
see the digest there. So sometimes parents are like, "Oh, I remember Archie as a kid," or the kids will be like, "What's this?" And then they'll get interested in it.
yeah,
So it's the perfect selling point, really, for us. And we're different from other companies too, because like a lot of companies count on what they sell, direct market.
yeah,
Whereas Archie, we do sell direct market stuff, but our main sales are newsstand,
yeah. Which
which is which is
it's
odd.
really cool. But, well, it's odd and but also really cool because I
Mhm.
feel like that used to just be like that's where you got comics from. Like
Yeah.
and and it's unfortunate that like you can't get the rest of it like there the way you used to, but there's something a little endearing and heartwarming about the fact that like Archie is still like keeping the newsstand warm for the
It
comic
is, and
industry.
I was just in a store like the other day. I was up at Walgreens down here, and I saw like they had a new rack, like a new magazine rack with like People magazine and like some cooking magazine. And then there
Yeah,
was the Archie one, and it even has like its little slot with the logo on it, kind of built into the thing. So
nice.
that just shows you how much like
It's
there's like
an,
a
it's an
staple
institution.
of your checkout. And I know during the pandemic we did really well because people still had to go to Walmart and had to go to grocery stores.
Yeah,
So again, we had a very captive audience during the pandemic because they couldn't go anywhere else basically except to the food stores
yeah.
and the drug stores. So you know, and then people had some extra cash and they bought a lot of digests.
Well, uh, we've talked about Archie a lot, which is as everybody should, because Archie is eternal. Everybody in the comic book industry.
That's true.
But you also have a really fun creator-owned series,
Hmm.
which it's a little bit racier
A little
than
bit.
Archie, but also feels very familiar to Archie because your art style
Yeah.
has a very unique fingerprint.
Hmm.
So, can you tell us about your creator-owned series, Die Kitty Die?
Yeah. Yeah. came out with Die Kitty Die around 2016, I guess, with my friend Fernando Ruiz, who's also a longtime Archie artist, and started it by doing it as a Kickstarter. Yeah, and that's Die Kitty Die Heaven and Hell. That's the third book. We've done 4 series so far, and there's Hollywood or Bust. That was the second one, and yeah, we like the concept of basically the character of Kitty is about a witch, and who is a comic book character, and the company is like, how do we get her sales improved, because she's been around for like years and years, and her books aren't selling anymore. So
Mhm.
the company decides they're going to like kill her off to boost sales, which is something we've seen before in comic books. But in this world's a little different because the characters are sort of semi-real, or they are real. They coexist within the world with the actual
Oh, nice.
comic book companies. So it's sort of like, you think of like Roger Rabbit a little bit. The cartoon characters are real parts of the world.
Yeah.
So basically, this corrupt sort of owner of this company decides to kill off Kitty, but he decides to hire, you know, the other failing characters to kill her off. And then maybe kind of promises them,
Well,
you'll get your own book, or we'll bring you back if you can off Kitty.
yeah.
So it becomes a little bit of a contest to see who can kill her. So, but yeah, that was the premise of the book, and started out with doing it as a Kickstarter. I'd never done a Kickstarter before.
Oh, that was your first Kickstarter?
That was my first Kickstarter, yeah.
Oh, nice.
And, so it was kind of dove in. My friend Giselle Lagasse up in Canada, she does a series called Menage a Trois, and she
Oh,
does a
yeah.
lot of it on Kickstarter. She basically said hers is an online comic, and then she collects it all in these volumes that she kickstarts.
Yeah.
And I learned a lot from her because she does really fantastic with the Kickstarter. So
Yeah, I feel like Kickstarter has really become the almost the comic book pre-order system for the industry
yeah.
for indies.
Well, and the thing with Kickstarter is great is because you create a series, and if it does well, it's already pre-tested for comic book
Yeah.
companies. So it's easy to get a company to pick you up because you've already done the hard work.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we've done four series of Die Kitty Die,
Nice.
and probably do another one like next year. I was going to do it this past year, but the Kevin Kickstarter took the
Yeah.
wind out of me.
Yeah.
That was a lot more work than I thought it was going to be. And with COVID, it was a challenge waiting for printing to come in
Yeah.
and all this other supply stuff. So,
Yeah.
so take a break for the rest of this year and dive in again next year.
Nice.
But Kickstarters they're great. They are the thing about Kitty that was great is that we didn't want to do the concept and then shop a concept around. We just wanted to do it exactly how we wanted to,
Yeah.
and then do it on Kickstarter, and then have people come to us afterward.
Yeah. I remember when I think it was the year I opened, that free comic book day was that you had a Die Kitty Die as part of free comic book day.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That was like I think the second year that we did that. We were with Chapter House Comics in Canada,
Okay.
and that's who was our our they put out the single issues for us and distributed us to Diamond, and then like we basically kickstarted the trades, and they
Okay.
did the single issues for us.
Nice.
So yeah, it was great. It's been a real fun series. We've done we also kickstarted like several specials too. We did like a summer special and a Christmas special. So
Nice.
if you add up the 4 issues for each trade and all the specials, I think we've done like 25, 30 issues of that book. So we've
Oh, nice.
done a lot in 4 or 5 years.
Which is like really impressive for an indie series like that. Like I feel like like kind of producing indie comics. I feel like a lot of normies, not non-comic folk, don't
Yeah.
realize like how much work like a creator has to put in when they're producing the series themselves. Like,
Well, it is a lot of work because you're doing like I was doing all the production,
yeah,
and really not paying ourselves until the Kickstarter was basically done,
yeah,
until the books were printed. Then we paid ourselves towards the end. Like
yeah,
really, we were making money when the books were in stores,
yeah,
that's when we were starting to make money on it. But so you have
Yeah,
to kind of learn that you don't pay yourself up front. Where when you're working for Archie, I get a paycheck every couple of weeks, so you
yeah,
get
exactly.
spoiled.
Yeah.
So that dynamic sort of changes. Um,
Well,
but no,
since
it's just a lot of fun creating something from scratch and doing whatever you want, like as
yeah.
crazy as you want to do it. So
Well, since we're on the subject of like the comic industry as a whole,
mhm.
um, one thing I always tell people is the comic industry is not perfect, but coming from when I was a kid, it's really improved seriously just overall in terms of the type of content that it produces, the types of creators that are now allowed to like kind of be featured and hired and focused
Mhm,
on.
mhm.
So it's not a perfect industry by far, but it's definitely a huge improvement, like throughout the years. Uh,
Yeah.
that being said, is there any aspect of like the industry currently that you'd still like to see change in, and like what would that be?
Um, I mean, I like, I mean, I wish that, comics sold like they did, in the 60s and 70s when a book would sell like 500,000 copies. The numbers aren't quite what they used to be. But now it's a lot more trades. Like now it's sort of
Yeah,
like single issues come out to sort of fuel trades.
yeah,
Um, so there's that kind of dynamic. But I wish there was, I still wish there was more comics for kids. Like, 'cause when I grew up, I was like obsessed with Harvey comics.
yeah,
Loved Harvey comics. And if you read Daikiri Dai, you'd see that. As we put a lot of Harvey references in there.
yeah,
Um, but I would love to see more of that because when I used to go to the store, there'd be Harvey, there'd be like all the Dell comics, and of course Archie. But
yeah.
and now it's just a lot more. You don't see it quite as much, Whereas I
That's
think comics used to be more of an entry level thing for kids. I don't think it's quite that as much anymore.
that was something that when I opened Mega Brain, um, it was always one of the top things on my list of important things to make sure that we accomplish with the shop was make sure that we have an actual kids section
Right.
and make sure it's like towards the front of the shop so that
Yeah.
when kids actually come in, they
Mhm.
can see exactly like, oh, that's like this is for me,
Yeah.
because in the
I mean,
end, your
that's
your your grown-ups are all like the guys like us, we're
mhm.
always gonna go to a comic shop, and whether the comics that we want are in the back or in the basement or whatever, we're gonna seek them out and get them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think having a kids section in the front of a store is a great idea because, you want to, kids have a short attention span.
Yeah.
You want them to see what's there.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that with stores like yours and other stores that I think are like the better shops, they have like a dedicated kids section. And I think
Yeah.
that's really important.
It always bothered me, when especially once I had my first kid and going into a comic shop and it was like, "Oh, like, where's your kids' books?" And it's like they kinda root around and they're like, "Here it is."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, "Oh, that one, thanks. Okay."
Or there's like one long box in the
Yeah,
back somewhere with some kids comics in it. Right.
yeah,
Right.
kids comics from, like, the '50s and the '60s, but, like, nothing new. So I'm right there with you. I feel like I keep kind of harping on the fact that Warner Brothers and Disney aren't taking advantage of, as you were putting it, like their captive audience. Like
Hmm.
they have Disney Plus, HBO Max, all these like Marvel and DC properties that people are like, no matter what, if they make it, everybody's going to watch it, whether it's good or not. We've
Right.
but at the beginning of all these movies when they're playing trailers or every time we turn on a show on Disney Plus, like when I watch a new episode of Miss Marvel on Disney
Hmm.
Plus,
Hmm.
before that show starts, why is there not like some commercial that says, "Hey, if you like this show that you're about to watch, here's some books that you can go to the bookstore or your local
Right.
comic store and seek out because you'll love these too. Like they have a captive audience that they could.
Or why even when you're watching like the Avengers in the movie theater, it's going to
Yeah,
be seen by millions and millions of people. Just say like collect these
yeah,
trades, these
even
Marvel comics. Even
yeah,
if like a tiny percent of those millions of people go, it would make a difference.
that would put a huge bump in sales compared like where they are now. Like
Yeah.
even if it's a little blurb like at the end of their little post credit scene, like just something to
I
let
mean,
people know that like this stuff comes from someplace.
if like 20 million people see a Marvel movie, and even a blurb like that gets 100,000 people to buy a comic, 100,000 is a lot
Yeah,
in the comic book industry.
yeah. It's just it's been insane to me that there's no such thing as like comic book commercials. Like,
Yeah,
because they're spending $100 million on basically a comic book commercial already.
yeah.
Just go that little extra mile to actually tell people about the thing.
And they're just fueling themselves because these are going to be more comics coming out with more stories they can adapt to more TV shows and movies. It's like a
Yeah,
good it's a cycle.
yeah. I don't know, but that's my gripe with the
Yeah, I
industry.
know they're not taking advantage of that for sure.
Yeah. So before I let you go, can you let us know, is there anything, I know you're in convention season right now, which means
Mhm.
you literally don't have any time to yourself. But is there anything in particular that you're like geeking out on in terms of like either reading or watching, playing or listening to?
Um, I am reading as far as comics go. I have a pile of comics like this high that I haven't gotten to. I'll probably
Yeah.
get to them like around Christmas time when I have like
Yeah.
the holidays off. Um, I've been reading like the Human Target, which is really cool.
Oh,
These
I haven't read it yet. I have the first arc.
so good. The
Uh,
art is so good. Oh my god, it's like so great. That book's really good. Saga's back, and I like Saga. Um,
I have to really catch up on Saga.
yeah, I kind of forgot a lot of stuff that went on too,
Yeah.
but I'm catching up with that now. And then as far as like TV shows, I geek out on. Like what am I watching now? The usual like I just Obi Wan, Stranger Things, the usual geeky stuff that we all watch on Netflix.
Yeah.
But I like a lot of other shows like HBO Max. I like Hacks on HBO Max.
I haven't tried Hacks yet, but I hear it's
Great.
amazing.
It's
Uh,
fantastic. It's really
I
fantastic.
we got very excited. I don't know if you've watched, but we didn't realize that it was coming back this soon. But we opened Hulu and Only Murders in the
Oh
Building.
yeah, I'm watching that right now. I'm
Oh
watching
yeah,
that now. Yeah,
yeah.
it's
So
great.
we
Yes,
just watched the new season 2, episode 1 last night, and
yep.
that's a show that really surprised me.
Me
And
too.
yeah,
The chemistry is so good on that show with those characters.
I
But
was really happy that like Steve Martin and Martin Short, a
I
lot
know.
of times how older comedians sometimes are just still kind of cranking the same shtick.
Yeah.
So I was worried that's what we were gonna get from them, but they're
Mhm.
really like they've somehow kind of are being very fresh, which
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
like.
no, the 3 characters have such a good chemistry. Steve Martin, I know he's like 78 or 79 years old.
Yeah,
He just doesn't seem like an old person to me still.
yeah,
He seems like he's still the Steve Martin I've always watched.
yeah,
And Martin Short too. He's just Martin Short's so funny, but that's a definitely that's a definitely really good show. I watched the whole first season. I've watched the 2 episodes that are on Hulu right now.
oh nice.
And but yeah, I watch a lot of those. Like I can't think of that many right now. But whenever like Queen's Gambit, when something comes on that I don't even
Yeah,
expect, and then I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
So I watched on Hulu. There was that show about what was it about the I can't think of the name. It was like the woman who was like gonna create that whole like blood testing thing,
Oh, the
Thornos or
dropout.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah.
dropout. Yeah, that was good. That
I
was good.
didn't watch that. I did. We watched the documentary when
Hmm.
it came out originally, but I haven't seen the show.
Yeah, and I
That's
watched the staircase on HBO Max
oh, I
with
don't know.
Tony Collette is in it,
Huh?
and I forget the guy's name, the actor. He's in a lot of stuff. It's basically like a real life story of this guy's wife gets murdered, falls down a staircase. So you can, and then they kind of tell the story in different versions. So you have to sort of guess whether you
Oh,
think he
like
really did it or not.
a Rashomon type thing.
There's like four different ways she could have died. Um,
Oh,
and like he was convicted of the murder, but then he was like set free. But then people still think he really did it. There's actually a documentary on Netflix about the whole story.
oh,
Then there's the HBO Max miniseries that's like the fictional account of it.
oh, cool,
But it's great. It's just good. Tony Collette's really good. And,
nice.
yeah. So yeah, I watch a lot of TV.
Well, thanks for doing this, Dan. This was awesome, and
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to seeing you in person tomorrow.
Me too. Me
Uh,
too.
yeah, it should be a good day. Like it's been pretty crazy in town today, so I think we're gonna have a pretty decent crowd tomorrow.
Okay, I'll be ready.
And that being said, anybody that is seeing this who's in the Hudson Valley, if you're able, come to Rhinebeck tomorrow from 1 o'clock till 4 o'clock. Dan will be here and he will be signing many copies of his comic books. He will have art prints and things like that, and he will just be here being awesome if you just want to like
Just stop
point
by and say hi.
at him and be like, "Hey, you're awesome." So yeah, so thanks everybody for watching, and then we'll see you tomorrow.
Great. Thank you.